looked at as being decisive was Debbie Lesko of Arizona, Congresswoman Lesko, simply pointed out to him an incredible contradiction, so incredible that when he came back to a different committee in the afternoon, he had to retract his testimony in the morning, which made him a conflicted and impeached witness. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko joins me now. She is from Arizona. She's an old friend of mine. I'm glad she's in Congress, and I'm glad she's on the Judiciary Committee yesterday. Congresswoman Debbie Lesko, welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Would you start by, before we go to the actual exchange that was his undoing with you, what was that like yesterday? Because I actually felt bad for the special counsel and was encouraging Republicans online in the afternoon to lay off of him because it was over. If it was a fight, they would have stopped it.
Yeah, I was very surprised. I had never met Mr. Mueller before or talked with him before, so I quite honestly was very surprised. He seemed disoriented. I'm not sure what was going on there, but that was surprising.
Well, you are a very experienced legislator. So in Arizona, before you got to Congress, right? You were in the House and the Senate there.
I was. I served 6 years in the Arizona House and 3 years in the Arizona Senate. And I was going to run for Senate president, thought I had the votes, and then unexpectedly my congressman resigned, and here I am.
So
life takes us on incredible journeys, doesn't it?
It does. So when you say you were surprised, you've seen a lot of people testify. It's not like this is new to you, even though you're only in your third year. This is not your first rodeo in terms of watching witnesses. So when you found him to be completely not what you expected, that's why you were surprised, I gather.
That definitely is why I was surprised. At first, I thought maybe he was doing it to kill time or something like that, because he has a long resume, and so I was quite surprised. Some very basic questions he had trouble answering, and it didn't matter if it was from the Republican question or a Democrat question. People would read from the report, and then he then say, is that correct, or something to that effect. And he really struggled. He would say, could you repeat that? I'll have to get back to you, things like that. I mean, I'm not sure what was happening there, but it was obvious he was struggling.
When you left the dais and you take breaks, you talk to your colleagues. What were you saying to each other about Special Counsel Mueller?
Well, I don't think we talked a lot. I talked to some people, and we basically all noticed the same thing, and thought we better not dive into him too hard, because he was definitely struggling.
But so you did ease off of him, because I did not want
Yes.
him beaten up by Republicans. I
Right.
thought it was not fair to him. He was clearly out of his depth and feeble. Actually, did the word feeble come up?
The word feeble did not come up in my circle of who I talked to. But again, it was. I'm not sure what was happening. I don't know if he didn't get any sleep. I don't know if he was stressed out. I'm not sure what was happening, but it was very obvious. And to the people that were watching, that he was he was struggling. And this is something I did not expect. I expected somebody that was going to be really on top of their game and coming back at us and that type of thing.
Now, the thing I wanted to stress, I tweeted about it while I was watching the testimony. You said to him, look, you just told Ted Lieu, and you were talking to Special Counsel Mueller, that you did not indict the president because of the OLC opinion, but on May 29, your office said that wasn't the case. And he confirmed to you that that's what he said, but then 3 hours later, he withdrew his testimony. Were you watching in the afternoon when he basically conceded your point?
I wasn't. I was busy working. I work here from early in the morning to late at night. I have two committees at the same time today. It's kind of crazy here. But my staff told me, and so that was good. And so when I heard what he said, his answer to Mr. Lieu, the Democrat, I knew that I had to respond to that because that was just a huge statement that I assumed that Mr. Mueller was confused about his answer or something. That was my assumption, and I wanted to set it straight.
Well, you did. And not only did you set it straight, he obviously was told by his colleagues and staff that he had to begin the afternoon by getting out of that jam because it was obvious. The May 29th statement was obvious. It said there is no daylight between the AG and the SC. The Attorney General and the Special Counsel both agree that you could indict despite the OLC opinion is not what led to the refusal to say the president had obstructed justice. The evidence wasn't there to come to that conclusion. So then, Congresswoman Lesko, you've been watching this for a year now. What happens next? Are we done? Can we all go home now and just say there is no there, no collusion, no conspiracy, no obstruction? We're done, done, done?
Well, I think for the American people, we're done, done, done. But unfortunately, I've watched too closely my Democrat colleagues, and Mr. Nadler is just obsessed, absolutely obsessed. I cannot describe it any other way how some of my Democrat colleagues, I mean, a lot of them, especially in judiciary, are obsessed about undermining the president of the United States and impeaching him. And it's like a rabid animal or something. They cannot get their mind on anything else except taking out the president. It's really hurting the American public because the American public wants us to work together on big issues that are important, like let's fix the border crisis for number one. And all we're talking about in judiciary, instead of doing immigration bills that will actually fix the problem, all we're doing is subpoena after subpoena, contempt of Congress after contempt of Congress. And, I just don't think they can get over it. It's very unfortunate.
When you say, I just don't think they can get over it, what's that mean?
I think that their whole I think they hate President Trump so much and want to make sure that their candidate gets in as president in 2020, that their whole entire mission among multiple committees, so this is, I think, through leadership, is to undermine President Trump to affect and influence the 2020 election. And they're doing it using committees that are taxpayer funded, and that's what they're doing. It's all out mission to undermine President Trump, and they're so focused on that they cannot break away for whatever reason to work on things that really matter to the American public, like fixing the immigration problem. I mean, it's a huge crisis.
It is a huge crisis, but I
Yeah.
believe, and tell me if you agree or disagree, and feel free to, it's electoral death to continue to beat this drum, and it's ratings death. I'm talking about it today because it happened yesterday, but I'm not going to talk about impeachment for the next year and a half because it's ratings death. And if MSNBC or CNN or Fox News talks about impeachment, their ratings will be destroyed because the American people have had it. They don't believe it. They don't like it. They want the president to do his job, and they want you and your colleagues to do your job. And I think Nadler and Schiff and the rest of them are nuts to follow this, Congresswoman Lesko.
Well, hey, I totally agree with you. Unfortunately, I've just seen it. It's become commonplace to issue subpoenas, to issue contempt of Congress. There's talk of doing another one. It is just total insanity on that front. And I'm on 3 committees, right? So I'm on Judiciary, I'm on Homeland Security, and I'm on the Rules Committee. And last year on Homeland Security, when the Republicans were in majority, we actually worked in a bipartisan fashion on that committee because protecting our country is pretty important. This year, it's all about the border. It's all about how terrible Donald Trump is because he's separating children, even though that is, ended over a year ago. I mean, this is all. We're having another meeting on that today. It's constant. And the only thing I can think of why they would continue down this path is hoping that somehow it's going to influence the 2020 election. That's the only reason I can think of. It has to be a concerted effort. But it is total insanity.
And Debbie Lesko, people will be listening this morning on AM 960 The Patriot to this conversation in your home district. I am just curious what you hear from them when you go out and see them on the weekends. I know you go back every weekend and you're in Arizona. Say hello to Doug Ducey for me and all my friends over at AM 960. I love going to Arizona. You know how often I'm there. What are they telling you when you hold your town halls and you go out and you greet people at shopping centers and you do the things that Congress people do on the weekends? What are they telling you about this fiasco? Do they want it over or do they want more of it?
The normal person is just sick and tired of this constant bickering and going on in Washington, D.C., and they are through with it. They don't want any more talk about impeachment. And besides, listen, yesterday, many of the Democrats on Judiciary Committee sat there and said, oh, this proves that we can go ahead and impeach the president. Well, you know what? They're in majority. If they really think that they have the proof and the evidence to impeach the president, why aren't they doing it? And why did the vote go down by so much last week when that issue came up? I mean, it failed miserably. And so, all this talk and, they can do it. They could move for impeachment. They just know that they don't have the votes or they know it would be bad for them. I mean, anyway.
They know they don't have the votes. Well, Congresswoman, you did a great job yesterday, and I'm glad that unlike a lot of your colleagues, you focused in on a laser on one thing and made one point. It's the way to use 5 minutes, which is to focus in on one thing, the May 29th statement, and contradict the witness. And that was a key point. It was a pivotal point yesterday. My hat is off to you, Debbie Lesko, and thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you for everything you do, Hugh. And we have to save America. So let's all work together.
Well said. Thank you,